Hi, this is Andy Collin and Chris Pomeroy with Growing Up Aspen, a Joiner's Table podcast with a student we went to school with, Stacey Kalkowski, who had a trip through Hollywood and is now a professor at one of UAE's oldest college universities.
Yeah, I do. I think it's true. And I think, I just found it interesting that a lot of people have really, but I'm always surprised by, like, we grew up in such a liberal place.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised by how many Republicans.
Yeah, I know, me too.
I really like, and not just like Matt Gorsuch, he's a hardcore Republican, you know, and I look back and I go, oh, it's so weird. We grew up in the same town, but you know, it's obviously then experiences past, you know.
Well, I also think right now everybody says Republican, but I think Republican is a big gray area right now. There's a difference between conservative and stepping on people. Conservative.
I think it's the same in the Democratic Party too. You know,
You're right. I mean,
I mean, both parties are in a way kind of the same, but you know, that's why I don't understand why everyone's at each other's throats. Really, I feel
like the centers need to come together while the fringes stay fringe. And
exactly.
And
see, I think that's it. You've got MAGA is completely separate from the old school Republicans.
Yep,
and many of the old school Republicans have split off from that party. And I think they're more in the middle.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can elaborate on what you're seeing on the left, Stacey, in the same regard. But I do think we got to meet in the middle. We're not going to.
Well, you know, interestingly, because I haven't been really spending time in the U.S. in the last 12 years, I only see, you know, from news things if I see the news. And interestingly, world news is completely different than U.S. news. So U.S. news is, I watched something the other day and I was on MSNBC and I was shocked at how opinionated they were over the stupidest things. And I was like, you know, and I would call myself a liberal. And I was just stunned by, like, what? Why are you talking about this when there's so many other things going on, you know, right? Yeah. It just didn't seem important. If you want news, you have to go directly like to Reuters or something. You can't.
Yeah.
Well, my wife goes to BBC. She feels like that's at least sort of, like you say, a little more
BBC World, maybe. Yeah.
Well, there are certain little islands in each of those things. There's like the Fox side, you have the data folks are actually pretty objective.
Well, you have
on MSNBC. I mean, you're right. It's mostly biased talk tracks, you know, opinions about what they think about the news rather than the actual news. There are some things out there like
all infotainment now,
Wallace.
Right? Being in the business, you guys know, it's all infotainment now. It's not actually
infotainment. Yes.
It's entertainment being like given as information when it's really not. They're trying to match, I think, social media, competing with social media and all these other things. And
whereas when we grew up, there was Walter Cronkite, and one night he would say, "This is this story's perspective, and this is the perspective from this thing, and this is the perspective from this thing." And so you would have to make a decision: which one do you, which angle do you like? And so it was presented to you, and you had a choice. Whereas now it's like, you're in a club or you're not in a club. There is no.
Yeah, it's got to get back to tell me the news. Don't tell me what you think about the news.
Or let's have a discussion instead of like beating each other up for having an opinion. I think that's just a sad situation. I mean, I would have never survived here if it was like that. You know, I work, the faculty in my department are from so many different countries that if you don't learn how to communicate, I mean, and even the simplest thing, like, which really irritated me when I first came here, people would write on emails, "dear," like, or, you know, just call you dear. Like it was like, you know, a grandmother talking to their child, dear. You know? And, you know, it's actually like a translation from, say, like Habibti, which is like Habibi or Habibti, but it's female, right? So it doesn't matter, but it's like a term of affection. But it was so annoying to me because I don't like you know, coming from a feminist point of view, I'm like, don't dear me,
Patronize.
smart me, don't. But they don't intend it to be that way. It's a language difference. So you really have to understand when you're working with people that are mostly English as a second language, that they're bringing their almost direct translation in. So communication can be quite challenging. So you have to work these things out. You know, you can't just be offended. You have to kind of either discuss it with them or, so I think that it would be worked better if everyone lived overseas for a little while and then came back to the US.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, I wholly agree on that.
I can't remember who said it, but it was the line or the quote was basically, travel is the cure for ignorance or something like that.
Twain, I think it was Mark Twain.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's always been in my mind about that. You don't really know
well, it's less
how good or bad you got it until you see somebody else and the way they live, you know.
Travel
that
is
too, and you have a basic understanding that like everyone in the world really just wants to go to work, get off of work, enjoy their family, raise their kids. It's all the same. Like there's no difference, you know. When you see teenagers in multiple like countries, they're all the same, you know, or whatever. It's like people just want to live their lives. I think it's a lot of the other stuff is just.
But that's why too. I think, you know, travel's one thing, but culture is another. And when you step into another culture, whether it's Thai or Chinese or Korean or anything, it's a whole nother experience. You experience a completely different perspective and a completely different way of looking at it. And when you go into that and experience it, that is when you come back with so much more. Mike Merrill talked about that, going up and doing his mountain climbing in all these different countries. You know, and at first he was kind of like, oh God, this is a crazy shithole country, blah, blah, blah. And then he started to realize how incredible it was and the people and the culture and all that stuff. And he came back thinking, God, what a shithead, you know? And
we're so Americentric that when we first go there, we try and place our values on other cultures and
project it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't realize like how like deeply rich it is, or like, you know, of course, you know, there's in every culture there's things that annoy you and there's things that you really love. But you just have to go, well, that's everybody, that's people, you know. So you've got certain things, but you can't go, you need to change when you're being hosted by another country. You can't, you know, it's not cool. I mean, you can be you.
You know, tying that back to Aspen and the whole experience there, I wrote a little bit about that in the book where when we moved to Georgia in the South, it was apparent to me that there was a lot of resistance to people. They call them Northerners, you know, we're Northerners, even though we're like west of exactly where this town is, you know. But anyway, it became apparent to me how much the locals did not like how people from the north came down and did exactly what you're trying to say, Stacey, which is they would say, this place is awesome. I love everything about it except for these things. And if we change those things, it'll be just like where I came from.
Yeah.
And everybody in Georgia is like, then go back to where you came from. Don't change it. We don't want it to change, you know.
Yeah, I mean, your presence changes it enough in a way. Like, you know what I mean? It's like if you're moving somewhere, you're not moving there to change the system.
Right.
You know, you're moving there to be a part of it. And then because you're a part of it, it changes.
But that's also what I felt made Aspen so special. Everybody that came, we all came at a very similar time. I would say between 76, 77, and 78, Aspen grew its most. And everybody that went there ditched their lives and went to Aspen and became part of the community and joined in with the Crumbs and the Wind Stars and the other projects and things that were going on there. And it was the people left everything and came there, and it became part of all the different mix of people that came there, kind of dropped everything and just became a mountain. They adopted the mountain lifestyle as opposed to living in LA. or living in New York or living in Miami, you know.
Well, I think that's why you move there too. I mean, it has slightly hippie life, like kind of vibe, right? You know, and it was more free there than certain areas, you know, in a way. I think that Aspen is like any community, like in a small area, you know, geographically, when you're geographically, it's small and you're geographically closed in that way, you're kind of forced to be a community in a way, aren't you? I think like if you don't, you know, if you don't become part of the community, you have to, it was a small town, right? So you had to depend on each other and you had to kind of, I do think that the lifestyle of that Aspen like encouraged people to be very athletic.
Yeah.
You know, because you're hiking, you're biking, you're skiing, you're this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was a lot of bringing people together, fishing, swimming in the pond. Yeah. You know, I do think that brought a lot of people together as a community.
Thanks for listening. The authors of Growing Up Aspen would like to thank you and would like to also thank the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News for giving us materials for our book, Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised, which you can get at twistandturnpress.com and any local bookstore. Thanks.